There's a sensor in your GMC that fails more often than any other component. It costs $10 to clean, but if you ignore it, you're looking at a $1,200 catalytic converter replacement. Most GMC owners have never cleaned it once. Some don't even know it exists, and right now, it's probably dirty in your truck, causing problems you haven't noticed yet. I'm going to show you exactly where it is, how to clean it, and at the end, why ignoring this sensor is costing you money every single mile you drive. Real quick, if you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. I post new GMC tips every week. The sensor I'm talking about is the mass airflow sensor, or MAE sensor. It sits in your air intake tube between the air filter and the throttle body, and its job is to measure exactly how much air is entering your engine. Your engine computer uses that information to calculate the correct amount of fuel to inject. The air-fuel ratio has to be precise. Too much fuel and your engine runs rich, too little fuel and it runs lean. Either condition causes problems. When your MAF sensor is clean and working properly, your engine runs smoothly, fuel economy is good, and emissions are low. But when that sensor gets dirty, everything goes wrong. And here's the problem: the MAF sensor gets dirty in every single GMC. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Every time air flows through your intake, it carries microscopic particles of dirt, dust, and oil residue. Your air filter catches most of it, but not all of it. Some of that contamination makes it past the filter and deposits on the MAF sensor. Over time, that buildup changes how the sensor reads airflow. It sends incorrect data to the engine computer, and the computer makes the wrong fuel calculations. Your engine starts running rich or lean, and you don't even know it's happening until the problems get bad enough to notice. Let me tell you what happens when your MAF sensor gets dirty. The first thing you'll notice is rough idling. Your engine might feel like it's hunting for the right RPM at a stoplight. It surges up and down slightly, never quite settling into a smooth idle. That's because the computer is getting bad airflow data and it's constantly adjusting the fuel mixture trying to compensate. You might also notice that the idle RPM is higher or lower than normal. A 5.3 liter or 6.2 liter should idle around 600 to 700 RPM when warm. If it's idling at 800 or 900 RPM, or if it's dropping down to 400 or 500 and feeling like it's about to stall, that's a sign the MAF sensor is sending bad data. Next, you'll notice poor fuel economy. If your GMC normally gets 18 miles per gallon and suddenly it's down to 15 or 16, a dirty MAF sensor is often the culprit. The computer thinks less air is entering the engine than actually is, so it injects too much fuel. You're burning extra fuel for no reason, and that adds up fast. On a truck that holds 26 gallons, losing 2 miles per gallon costs you an extra 5 gallons every tank. At $4 per gallon, that's $20 wasted every fill-up. Over a year, that's over $1,000 in wasted fuel. Then you'll notice hesitation on acceleration. You press the gas pedal, and there's a delay before the engine responds, or it stumbles and bogs down before it picks up speed. That's because the fuel mixture is wrong, and the engine isn't getting the power it should. On a Duramax diesel, a dirty MAF sensor can also cause black smoke from the exhaust because the engine is running too rich. The smoke is unburned fuel that's being pushed out through the exhaust system. If you see black smoke when you accelerate, especially under load, check your MAF sensor before you assume you have injector problems or turbo issues, and eventually you'll get a check engine light. The most common codes for a dirty MAF sensor are P0101, which means MAF sensor circuit range or performance problem, and P0171, which means MAF sensor circuit low input. When you see those codes, most people assume the sensor is bad and needs to be replaced. They go to the parts store, buy a new MAF sensor for $150 to $300, depending on the engine, install it, and the problem goes away. But here's what they don't realize. In most cases, the old sensor wasn't bad. It was just dirty. A $10 can of MAF sensor cleaner and 10 minutes of work would have fixed it. Now here's where it gets expensive. If you ignore a dirty MAF sensor and keep driving, your engine will run rich for weeks or months. That excess fuel doesn't just waste money at the pump, it also damages your catalytic converter. The catalytic converter is designed to handle a specific amount of unburned fuel in the exhaust. When your engine runs rich, it sends too much fuel through the exhaust system. The catalytic converter tries to burn off that excess fuel, and it gets hotter than it's designed to handle. Normal operating temperature for a catalytic converter is around 800 to 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. When the engine runs rich, the converter can reach 1200 to 1500 degrees. At those temperatures, the catalyst material inside, usually platinum, palladium, and rhodium, starts to break down. The ceramic honeycomb structure inside the converter can crack or melt. The converter becomes less efficient, and eventually it fails. When that happens, you'll get a check engine light with a code P0420, which means catalyst system efficiency below threshold. At that point, you need a new catalytic converter. On a GMC with a 5.3-liter or 6.2-liter engine, a catalytic converter replacement costs anywhere from $800 to $1,500, depending on whether you use an aftermarket or OEM converter and whether you go to a dealer or independent shop. On a Duramax diesel, it's even worse. The diesel exhaust system has a diesel particulate filter and a diesel oxidation catalyst, and if those get damaged from a rich-running engine, you're looking at $2,000 to $4,000 in repairs. All of that could have been prevented by cleaning a $10 sensor. So let's talk about how to clean your MAF sensor. It's one of the easiest maintenance tasks you can do on your GMC, and it takes about 10 minutes. First, you need to buy MAF sensor cleaner. Do not use carburetor cleaner, brake cleaner, or any other type of cleaner. Those products leave residue or contain chemicals that can damage the sensor. You need a cleaner specifically designed for MAF sensors. CRC MAF sensor cleaner is a good choice and costs about $10 to $12 at any auto parts store. You'll also need a small flathead screwdriver or a Torx driver, depending on your model year. Start by locating the MAF sensor. On most GMC trucks, it's in the air intake tube between the air filter box and the throttle body. It's a black plastic housing about 3 to 4 inches long with an electrical connector on one side. On a 5.3-liter or 6.2-liter, it's usually on the driver's side of the engine bay. On a Duramax, it's typically on the passenger side near the turbo inlet. Disconnect the electrical connector by pressing the tab and pulling it off. Be gentle. Don't yank on the wires. Then remove the screws or clamps that hold the sensor in the intake tube. On some models, the sensor is held in place by 2 small Torx screws. On others, it's held by clamps that you can loosen with a flathead screwdriver. Once the screws or clamps are loose, carefully pull the sensor out of the intake tube. Be gentle. The sensing element inside is delicate. Now you can see the sensor element. It's a small wire or film element inside the housing. On older GMC trucks, it's a hot wire sensor, a thin wire stretched across the opening. On newer trucks, it's a hot film sensor, a small ceramic element with a thin film coating. This is what measures the airflow, and this is what gets dirty. You'll probably see a light coating of dirt or oil on it. Shake the can of MAF sensor cleaner and spray the sensor element from about 6 inches away. Use short bursts, don't soak it. The cleaner is designed to evaporate quickly and carry away the contamination. Let the cleaner evaporate for a few seconds, then spray it again. Do this 3 or 4 times until the sensor element looks clean. Let the sensor air dry for about 5 minutes. Do not use compressed air to dry it, and do not touch the sensor element with your fingers or a rag. The sensor element is extremely delicate. On a hot wire sensor, the wire is only a few thousandths of an inch thick. If you touch it or blow compressed air on it, you can bend or break it. Once it's dry, reinstall it in the intake tube, tighten the screws or clamps, and reconnect the electrical connector. Make sure the connector clicks into place. That's it. Start your engine and let it idle for a minute. The computer will relearn the airflow readings from the clean sensor. If you had a check engine light, you'll need to clear the code with an OBD2 scanner, or you can disconnect the battery for a few minutes to reset the computer. Drive the truck normally and see if the problems are gone. In most cases, you'll notice an immediate improvement in idle quality, throttle response, and fuel economy. Now let's talk about how often you should clean your MAF sensor. GM doesn't have an official maintenance interval for this, but based on what I've seen, you should clean it every 30,000 miles. If you drive in dusty conditions, dirt roads, construction sites, desert areas, clean it every 20,000 miles. If you've installed an aftermarket air intake or a high-flow air filter, clean it every 15,000 miles. Those aftermarket intakes and filters flow more air, but they also let more contamination through. The stock air filter is designed to balance airflow and filtration. Aftermarket filters prioritize airflow, which means they sacrifice some filtration efficiency. And here's a pro tip. If you use an oiled air filter like a K&N filter, you need to be extra careful about cleaning your MAF sensor. When you oil the filter, some of that oil can get pulled into the intake and coat the MAF sensor. I've seen MAF sensors that were completely fouled with oil from an over-oiled air filter. The oil creates a sticky film on the sensor element, and dirt sticks to that film. If you use an oiled filter, apply the oil sparingly and let it soak in for a few hours before you install the filter. Don't over-oil it. The filter should look slightly damp, not wet. Now, here's something most GMC owners don't know. You can prevent MAF sensor contamination by maintaining your air filter properly. Your air filter is the first line of defense. If the filter is dirty or damaged, it can't do its job, and contamination gets through to the MAF sensor. Check your air filter every oil change. Pull it out of the box and hold it up to a light. If you can't see light through the filter media, it's too dirty and needs to be replaced. Don't try to clean a paper air filter by tapping it or blowing it out with compressed air. That doesn't work. The dirt is embedded in the filter media, and tapping or blowing just redistributes it. Just replace it. A quality air filter costs $20 to $30, and it protects a $300 MAF sensor and a $1,200 catalytic converter. It's cheap insurance. And make sure the air filter box is sealed properly. If there's a gap or a crack in the box, unfiltered air can bypass the filter and go straight to the MAF sensor. I've seen trucks where the air filter box wasn't seated correctly after an oil change, and within a few thousand miles, the MAF sensor was fouled with dirt. When you replace the air filter, make sure the box lid snaps down completely and all the clips are engaged. Let me tell you about a common mistake that makes MAF sensor problems worse. A lot of owners see a check engine light with a MAF sensor code, and they immediately replace the sensor without cleaning it first. They spend $300 on a new sensor when a $10 can of cleaner would have fixed it. But here's the real problem. If you don't address the root cause of the contamination, the new sensor will get dirty just as fast as the old one. I've seen owners replace the MAF sensor 2 or 3 times in 50,000 miles because they never cleaned the air filter or fixed the air intake system. They're treating the symptom, not the cause. If your MAF sensor keeps getting dirty, you need to figure out why. Check the air filter. Check the air filter box for cracks or gaps. Check the intake tube for holes or loose connections. If you have an aftermarket intake, make sure it's installed correctly and the filter is the right type. Fix the source of the contamination and your MAF sensor will stay clean. Now let's talk about what happens if you ignore a dirty MAF sensor for too long. I already mentioned the catalytic converter damage, but there's more. A rich running engine also fouls the spark plugs on a gas engine. The excess fuel creates carbon deposits on the spark plug electrodes, and eventually the plugs misfire. You'll feel a rough idle, loss of power, and you'll get misfire codes, P0301, P0302, and so on. Spark plug replacement on a 5.3 liter or 6.2 liter costs about $200 to $300 if you have a shop do it, or about $80 to $100 if you do it yourself. On a Duramax diesel, a rich running engine can clog the diesel particulate filter. The DPF is designed to trap soot from the exhaust, but if the engine is running rich, it produces more soot than the DPF can handle. The filter clogs, and you'll get a check engine light with a code P2459, which means DPF regeneration frequency. At that point, you need a forced regeneration, which costs $100 to $200 at a shop, or in severe cases, a DPF replacement, which costs $1,500 to $3,000. All of this damage starts with a dirty MAF sensor that costs $10 to clean. Here's another thing most people don't realize. A dirty MAF sensor affects your transmission. On modern GMC trucks, the transmission computer talks to the engine computer. If the engine computer is getting bad data from the MAF sensor, it sends incorrect information to the transmission computer. The transmission uses engine load data to decide when to shift and when to lock the torque converter. If that data is wrong, the transmission might shift at the wrong times, or it might not lock the torque converter when it should. You'll feel harsh shifts, delayed shifts, or the transmission hunting between gears. I've seen owners take their truck to the dealer for transmission problems, and the dealer charges them for a transmission flush or even a valve body replacement when the real problem was a dirty MAF sensor. Clean the sensor, and the transmission shifts normally again. This is especially common on trucks with the 8L90 or 10L80 transmission. Those transmissions are very sensitive to engine load data, and a dirty MAF sensor can make them shift erratically. Now let me tell you about a mistake that can destroy your MAF sensor permanently. Some people try to clean the sensor with the wrong products. I've seen people use carburetor cleaner, brake cleaner, WD-40, or even rubbing alcohol. Those products either leave residue or contain chemicals that damage the sensor element. Carburetor cleaner and brake cleaner are too aggressive. They can dissolve the protective coating on the sensor element or leave a film that makes the sensor read incorrectly. WD-40 leaves an oily residue that makes the problem worse. Rubbing alcohol can work in a pinch, but it's not ideal because it doesn't evaporate as cleanly as MAF sensor cleaner. Always use a cleaner specifically designed for MAF sensors. It's formulated to evaporate completely without leaving residue, and it won't damage the sensor element. I've also seen people try to clean the sensor with a cotton swab or a rag. Don't do that. You'll damage the sensor element. The hot wire or hot film is extremely delicate, and any physical contact can bend or break it. Just spray the cleaner and let it do the work. Here's a pro tip that even experienced mechanics sometimes miss. After you clean your MAF sensor, take your truck for a test drive and monitor your fuel trims. Fuel trims are adjustments the engine computer makes to the fuel mixture based on feedback from the oxygen sensors. You can view fuel trims with an OBD2 scanner that has live data capability. Short-term fuel trim and long-term fuel trim should both be close to zero, somewhere between -5% and +5%. If your fuel trims are way off, like +15% or -15%, that means the computer is making big adjustments to compensate for a problem. After you clean the MAF sensor, the fuel trims should move closer to zero. If they don't, you might have another problem: a vacuum leak, a bad oxygen sensor, or a fuel pressure issue. But in most cases, cleaning the MAF sensor brings the fuel trims back to normal. You can also check your fuel economy after cleaning the sensor. Reset your trip odometer and track your miles per gallon for a full tank. You should see an improvement of 1 to 3 miles per gallon if the sensor was dirty. Now here's the thing most GMC owners never think about. A dirty MAF sensor costs you money every single day you drive. Let's do the math. Say your GMC normally gets 18 miles per gallon, but a dirty MAF sensor drops it to 16 miles per gallon. That's a loss of 2 miles per gallon. If you drive 15,000 miles per year, you're using 937 gallons instead of 833 gallons. That's an extra 104 gallons per year. At $4 per gallon, that's $416 wasted on fuel. Over 3 years, that's $1,248. And that doesn't even count the cost of a catalytic converter replacement if the sensor stays dirty long enough to damage the converter. All of that money wasted because you didn't spend $10 on a can of cleaner and 10 minutes of your time. Think about it this way. Cleaning your MAF sensor once a year costs you $10 and 10 minutes. Not cleaning it costs you over $400 per year in wasted fuel, plus the risk of a $1,200 catalytic converter replacement. The return on investment is massive. Here's the final thing you need to know. Cleaning your MAF sensor is not a one-time fix. It's regular maintenance, just like changing your oil or rotating your tires. The sensor will get dirty again over time, and you need to clean it on a regular schedule. I recommend cleaning it every 30,000 miles or sooner if you notice symptoms. Add it to your maintenance routine. When you change your oil, check your air filter. When you check your air filter, think about your MAF sensor. If it's been 30,000 miles since you last cleaned it, take 10 minutes and clean it. It's one of the easiest and most cost-effective maintenance tasks you can do, and it protects your engine, your catalytic converter, and your wallet. And if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, any mechanic can clean it for you. Most shops will charge about $50 to $75 for the service, which is still a lot cheaper than replacing the sensor or the catalytic converter. Now you know why the MAF sensor is the most neglected component in your GMC, how to clean it, and why ignoring it costs you money every mile you drive. If you want to know what other sounds and symptoms mean trouble for your GMC, check out my video on the 7 warning sounds that mean you need to stop driving immediately. And if you're worried about getting ripped off at the shop, watch my video on dealership scams. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.